The first thing I heard that Saturday morning was a concrete truck grinding its drum behind my own house. 7:14 a.m. My coffee wasn't even done. I walked out the back door in a bathrobe. There was a chute hanging over my fence. My fence. On my deeded land, wet gray concrete was pouring straight into the creek that runs through my property. Standing in my yard was Marlene Voss, president of the Cedar Hollow HOA, sunglasses on at sunrise, clipboard in one hand, pointing at the chute like a foreman. Taped to the door of the truck was an orange HOA notice. Case number HOA 2024-091. Marlene's signature at the bottom. She saw me. She didn't flinch.
You'll thank us later, Frank. This eyesore has been violating community standards for years.
Don't even think about stopping the pour.
The board approved it Thursday.
Her board member Brad smirked from behind her shoulder. And we'll fine you $1,000 a day if you interfere. I took one sip of coffee. They had no idea what they had just done. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I took my phone out of my bathrobe pocket and started filming. I filmed the chute. I filmed the truck Apex Ready Mix, Unit 14. I filmed the orange notice with the case number on it. I filmed Marlene's face. I filmed Brad's polo. I filmed Suzanne, the third board member, standing slightly behind the others with the body language of a woman who had been promised this would be quick. I filmed the GPS coordinates ticking quietly on my weather app in the corner of the screen. Marlene laughed. "Look at the old man playing reporter," she said to Brad. "Frank, sweetheart, put the phone down. The drainage easement is HOA common area. We checked." She said it like it was settled. Like the words common area were a magic spell that turned other people's property into hers. I kept filming. 2 houses up, Doris Ramirez was on her porch in her morning robe, hand over her mouth. Across the cul-de-sac, Hector was leaning over his railing, phone already up, recording from his own angle. Neither of them said anything. They didn't have to. Their phones did the talking. I let the pour continue. I want to be very clear about this, because I have thought about it a lot since. I could have stopped them. One phone call to the county. One call to the EPA regional office. One call to the sheriff's non-emergency line. Any of those would have shut the pour down inside 20 minutes. I did not make the call. I wanted every cubic yard of concrete on record. I wanted every face in the frame. I wanted Marlene's voice on tape saying the drainage easement is HOA common area. I wanted the orange notice photographed from 3 angles before the dust settled. If they were going to bury my creek, I wanted them to bury it all the way. And then I wanted to bury them with the paperwork. Marlene mistook my silence for surrender. They always do. She turned back to the chute and waved the driver on. Brad pumped a little victory fist. Suzanne, God bless her, said out loud, "See? He's not going to do anything." I watched 7 more yards of concrete go into my creek. I watched Marlene take a phone call about her grocery order. I watched Brad take a selfie with the truck. I watched Suzanne check her watch like the pour was inconveniencing her brunch reservation. I watched 3 grown adults seal the drainage spine of their own neighborhood and not understand what they were doing. When the truck pulled away around 8:30, Marlene walked over to my back fence, still on my side of it, and tapped the orange notice with one manicured fingernail. "You can take this one down whenever you like," she said. "The official copy is in your mailbox. The board appreciates your cooperation." She smiled. She actually smiled. I lowered the phone and spoke for the first time all morning. "Marlene, who told you the creek was HOA common area?" She blinked. "It's on the plat," she said. "Which plat?" "The community one. The one we got from the developer when we set up the board." "And you read the easement language yourself?" Brad reviewed it. Brad had wandered halfway down the yard to admire the concrete. He did not look up. I said. "Thank you, Marlene. Have a lovely Saturday." She didn't like that. She stood there for a beat, trying to work out which part she'd just lost. Then she straightened her clipboard, called her board members like they were small dogs, and marched them back toward the cul-de-sac. I waited until they were out of sight. Then I walked down to what used to be the creek. The water was already backing up against the fresh plug, not flowing, pooling. A thin gray sheen on the surface where concrete dust had settled. The little drainage marker the county had driven into the bank 12 years ago was sticking out of the wet pour like a tombstone. I took one more photograph. The marker, the plug, the gray water, the HOA welcome sign visible past the fence in the background. Then I walked back inside. I set the orange notice on the kitchen table next to my coffee. I sat down, and I looked at the bottom drawer of my desk, where I keep a leather folder I had not opened in years. I did not open it that morning. I just looked at it, because I already knew what was inside. She had no idea the creek she just buried had a federal file number, and she had no idea the man in the bathrobe was the engineer who gave it one. The truck was gone. The street was quiet. The concrete behind my fence was already starting to set in the morning sun. I sat at the kitchen table with the orange notice in front of me and let myself feel exactly one thing for about 30 seconds. Then I put it away. I have a rule, learned the slow way over 30 years of professional life. When somebody hands you a problem they think is too big for you to solve, the first thing you do is not solve it. The first thing you do is understand exactly what they just handed you. So I made a fresh pot of coffee. I sat back down, and I started building a list. Marlene Voss, president of the Cedar Hollow HOA, elected 2 years ago on a raising property values platform. 3 board members on the property at the time of the pour: Marlene, Brad Henley, Suzanne Park. Contractor, Apex Ready, Mix, Truck Unit 14. Notice number, OA 2024-091. Date, October 5th. Time of pour, approximately 7:15 to 8:30. I wrote it all down in pencil on a yellow legal pad. Then I got up, walked to my office, and pulled the leather folder out of the bottom drawer for the first time in 9 years. I did not open it. I just set it on the kitchen table, next to the legal pad, next to the orange notice, next to the coffee. It belonged there. I should tell you who I am, since the story does not work if you don't know. My name is Frank Doyle. I'm 58. I'm a licensed professional engineer in this state. License number 28041. I spent 30 years designing municipal stormwater and drainage systems, the part of a neighborhood you never notice until it floods, and then it's the only thing you notice. I retired 3 years ago. I have a koi pond, a small workshop, and a creek behind the house that I used to walk down to with my coffee every Saturday. That is what the HOA buried this morning. I am going to leave the rest of who I am, the part that matters, sealed inside that leather folder for now. You'll meet it when Marlene does. Cedar Hollow Estates was a quiet subdivision until 2 years ago. We used to wave at each other. We used to leave Christmas cookies on porches. The first HOA board ran the place like a volunteer committee at a small church. Then Marlene Voss moved in, bought the biggest house at the top of the hill, and decided the neighborhood was beneath her. She ran for the board. She won. She brought Brad and Suzanne with her. Inside 6 months, the HOA newsletter went from a one-page PDF about lost cats to a quarterly enforcement bulletin. I started keeping a list of what she did to people. The Pritchards got fined $400 for an incorrect shade of beige on their shutters. The shade was the one approved by the previous board. Marlene's board changed the rules and back-charged them. A widow on Magnolia Court, 81 years old, lived in that house for 36 years, got cited for non-conforming mulch. The mulch was pine bark. Pine bark. In Georgia, the fine was $300. A retired Marine on the next block got a lien threat over a flagpole. An American flag on a flagpole in his own front yard. The lien threat letter cited Article 12 of the HOA bylaws, common area beautification. The flagpole was not in a common area. The flagpole was in his front yard. Nobody on the board seemed to know the difference between the two words. And then there was Mr. Avery. I'll talk about Mr. Avery later. He's important. I'll just say this. Mr. Avery is the reason I started keeping the list in writing. I was halfway through reorganizing my notes when somebody knocked on the back door. Doris Ramirez, 73, 2 houses up. The woman who'd been on her porch in her robe during the pour, with her hand over her mouth. I let her in. She didn't sit down right away. "Frank," she said. "I saw the whole thing." "I know. I filmed you filming them." She let out a short laugh that turned into something else halfway through. She sat down at my kitchen table without asking. She looked at the orange notice and the legal pad and the leather folder, and she nodded slowly like a woman who had been waiting for this morning a long time. "Last spring," she said, "Marlene fined me $4,000 over a tomato planter. I remember. It was a tomato planter, Frank. On my own porch. I paid the fine because my husband had just had his hip done, and I couldn't deal with a hearing. I gave them $4,000 over a tomato." She looked out the back window toward the creek that wasn't there anymore. "They are not going to stop," she said. "Not on their own. They will fine us until we cannot afford to live here. They will lien us until we cannot sell. They will run every one of us out the way they ran out Mr. Avery. She put both hands flat on the table. Whatever you are about to do, Frank, I want to help. I let that sit for a moment. Then I tapped the leather folder once with 2 fingers. That creek out there, I said. Doris, that creek is not decorative. It is a drainage spine. The whole low end of this neighborhood drains through it. Every basement on the bottom 3 streets. The clubhouse. Marlene's house. Brad's house. Suzanne's house. The system was designed around that creek being open. She blinked. Designed by who? I didn't answer her. I just gave her a small smile and slid the legal pad across the table. Doris, would you write down in your own words exactly what you saw this morning? Time, faces, the truck, the notice, everything. Just like you'd tell a friend at the coffee shop. She picked up the pencil without hesitation. That was my first witness statement. It would not be my last. After Doris went home, I stood at the kitchen window for a long while. The morning sun was hitting the gray plug of concrete behind my fence. From this angle, you could see it had not been poured by a professional. The surface was uneven. The chute had been allowed to splash. There was no cofferdam, no silt boom, no erosion control. Whoever had quoted Marlene this job had given her the cheapest concrete pour in the state of Georgia and called it landscaping. It was, technically, a federal crime. But I was not going to be the one to tell her that. I was going to let somebody with a badge tell her that. I picked up the phone. I dialed a number I had not dialed in 15 years, the regional office of an agency I used to consult for, back when my license number was a lot lower than it is now. The line picked up. A woman's voice. Familiar, even after all this time. EPA, Region 4, Officer Chen. Officer Chen. This is Frank Doyle. I need to open a case file. There was a pause. The kind of pause where somebody on the other end is sitting up a little straighter in their chair. Frank Doyle. The Frank Doyle? The same. Where? Cedar Hollow. Tributary 4. The pause on her end got longer. Frank, are you telling me somebody touched Tributary 4? They didn't touch it, Karen, sorry, Officer Chen. They filled it. They poured concrete into it this morning. I have video. I have the contractor unit number. I have the HOA notice with the president's signature on it. I have 2 neighbor witnesses already. I heard her exhale through her nose. Frank, I'm opening the file right now. Don't talk to the HOA. Don't sign anything. Don't accept any settlement. Don't let them onto your property again without a sheriff present. I'll have an inspector out there inside 72 hours. Understood. And Frank, yes? They don't know who they did this to, do they? I looked at the leather folder on the kitchen table. Not yet, I said. The second orange notice came on Monday morning. Not on the mailbox, not on the gate, on the front door, at eye level. So that the first thing I saw when I came out for the paper was Marlene's signature staring back at me. Community Standards Violation Number 2 Interference with approved HOA project. Fine, $5,000. Lien filing in 30 days, if unpaid. The interference was me filming the pour on Saturday from my own back porch. $5,000. For raising a phone on my own property. I peeled the notice off my door, folded it, and drove to the clubhouse. The HOA office is a converted pool house at the front of the subdivision. Glass front, fake plants. A laminated sign that says hours. By appointment only. Marlene had given herself a name placard the size of a dinner plate. I walked in without an appointment. She was at the desk. Brad was in the visitor chair drinking coffee out of a mug that said, World's Best HOA President. Suzanne was at a filing cabinet pretending to work. Marlene didn't stand. Frank, I assume this is about the violation. It is. Then I'll save us both time. The pour was board approved, Thursday the 3rd. The interference was witnessed by all 3 of us. The fine is non-negotiable, and the lien process is automatic. I'd like to see the board approval. The written one. She rolled her eyes, actually rolled her eyes, and slid a single sheet across the desk. I picked it up. A 1-page memo. 3 sentences. Authorizing the remediation of the rear easement drainage corridor under Article 12 of the Cedar Hollow Bylaws Common Area Beautification. Signed by Marlene, Brad, and Suzanne. Dated October 3rd. Article 12. Common Area. I read it twice to make sure I was not misreading it. I was not. Article 12 of the bylaws only covers actual recorded common area pool, clubhouse, entry monument. The creek was none of those. It was on my deeded property. Marlene had just handed me a signed confession that the board had acted outside its own authority. I folded the memo and put it in my jacket pocket. She watched me do it. "You can keep that copy. We have the original." "I'm sure you do." Brad leaned back and smirked over his mug. "We already paid the contractor, Frank. $4,200. You can't undo concrete. Settle fast before the interest starts." Suzanne added, without looking up, "And honestly, the easement is going to look much nicer once we sod it over in the spring." I looked at her for a long second. She actually meant that. She was already imagining grass. Marlene leaned forward. "Frank, let me be very clear. We have done this before. You can fight us and spend 2 years and $40,000 on a lawyer, or you can write us a check today and we all move on. The board has been very patient. Pay the fine, or we start lien proceedings. And once a lien is on your house, you cannot sell, you cannot refinance. You will lose this house the same way Mr. Avery lost his." There it was. She had said his name, out loud, in her own office, in front of 2 witnesses. I had not even brought him up. "Mr. Avery," I said. "Remind me, Oak Court?" Her eyes flickered just for a second. He was non-compliant. Repeatedly. The board followed proper procedure. The board took his house, Marlene. The bank took his house. The HOA initiated the lien. Is there a difference? She didn't answer. I let the silence do the work. 3 seconds. 5. 10. Her smile started to look more like a tooth display than a smile. "I'll review the memo," I said. "I'll be in touch." I turned to leave. I was almost at the door when she called after me. "By the way, Frank, the county denied your creek complaint years ago. We pulled the file. This isn't your fight anymore." I stopped with my hand on the handle. Turned around. "What complaint, Marlene?" "There's a complaint on file from 2011. Someone wanted the creek listed as a protected waterway. It was denied. We have the paperwork." "From 2011. "Yes." "Marlene, I didn't move into Cedar Hollow until 2012. She blinked. "I never filed a creek complaint, and whoever did, in 2011, was not me. So I'd be very careful about which paperwork you're waving around right now." Her mouth opened, then closed. I let myself smile, small, polite, the way you smile at someone who has just stepped on a rake and walked out. Doris and Hector were on the bench outside the clubhouse. Doris had a thermos and 2 folded affidavits in her purse. The Pritchards had pulled their car around and parked across the lot, watching. Doris stood up. "Well, they handed me their own confession," I said, "on letterhead, with 3 signatures. Hector blinked. "They what?" "Article 12, common area. They wrote down that the pour was authorized under a bylaw that does not apply to my property. It's in my pocket." Doris looked at Hector. Hector looked at Doris. Then she started laughing quietly at first, then louder. The kind of laugh that had been waiting $4,000 and 1 tomato planter to come out. "Frank," she said, "whatever you're about to do, please do it on a Tuesday so I can be there." "It won't be a Tuesday, but you'll be there." I drove home and laid the violation notice on the kitchen table next to Saturday's orange notice, the legal pad, and the leather folder. 4 items now. The least important was the $5,000 fine. The most important was the folder. Everything in between was rope. Marlene was handing me, foot by foot, with her own signature on it. I opened my laptop and pulled up the long-range forecast. A tropical system was forming off Florida, tracking north-northwest. Landfall projections still 10 days out, but the cone of probability ran straight up through our part of Georgia. 6 to 9 inches of rain. I looked at the folder. I looked at the forecast. I made a note on the legal pad, in pencil, in the same careful handwriting I had used for 30 years of engineering drawings. Rain arrives on the 14th. Tell the neighbors to charge their phones. By Tuesday night, my living room had stopped being a living room. The coffee table was a war room. The kitchen counter had a printer on it and a stack of binder clips Doris had brought over without being asked. 6 people sat around the room: Doris, Hector, the Pritchards, a retired postal worker named Ray whose basement floods every spring, and a younger guy named Marcus, who had been fined $800 for the color of his garage door and had been waiting for somebody to push back ever since. I had pulled 6 folders out of the leather case in my office. I had not opened the leather case itself. That stayed sealed. I tapped the first folder. "Before we start, we are not suing the HOA. Not yet. We are building a record. Every one of you walks out tonight with a copy. So if anything happens to me or to my house, this doesn't die on a hard drive. Carol Pritchard leaned forward. If anything happens to you? Marlene threatened to lean on my house yesterday, Carol. I'm being careful, not paranoid. Bill grunted. Same difference these days. I opened folder 1. The deed. Filed in 2012. The creek bed is on my private property. The HOA holds an easement for non-destructive maintenance and access purposes only. In plain English, they're allowed to walk down there and pick up sticks. They are not allowed to pour concrete into it. Folder 2. County plat from 1996. The creek is labeled right here, Tributary 4, Protected Drainage Corridor, not common area, not HOA landscaping. Folder 3. The one I had been waiting to show them. I laid it next to the plat. And this is the HOA's own memo from Saturday. Marlene signed it. She authorized the pour under Article 12, Common Area Beautification. Article 12 only applies to common area. The creek isn't common area. It's on this plat, with my name on the deed. Ray squinted at the 2 pages side by side. Frank. She signed a document that says she did the one thing she's not allowed to do. That's what she did. Did she know? She did not. Doris took her glasses off and pinched the bridge of her nose. I moved on. Folder 4. Video. The pour. The truck unit number. The orange notice. Marlene on camera saying, quote, "The drainage easement is HOA common area, sweetheart." 3 angles, same minute. Folder 5 witness statements. Folder 6 is the one I want everyone to listen to. I opened it. This is every fine, every lien threat, every forced settlement Marlene's board has issued in 22 months. Doris helped me pull it from the newsletter archives. I read the totals. 14 homeowners, 63 fines, $147,000 collected, 2 liens, 1 foreclosure. The room got very quiet. Mr. Avery, Carol said softly. Mr. Avery, Oak Court, lost his house in March. Marlene named him at me yesterday like a warning. Remember that name. Hector cleared his throat. Frank, what do we do with all this? Right now? Nothing. We hold it. We wait for 2 things. I held up 1 finger. 1. I called a federal agency Saturday afternoon. The creek isn't just on my deed. It's also a water of the United States under the Clean Water Act. Filling it without a federal permit is a federal violation. And the fines don't go to the HOA. They go to the individuals whose names are on that memo. Bill sat up. How much? $64,618. Per day. Per violation. Per signer. Silence. Marcus did the math in his head. I watched him do it. That's already over $200,000, he said quietly. It is. Ray put both hands on his knees. And the second thing? The rain. I turned the laptop screen toward the group. The National Weather Service had updated. The tropical system off Florida had a name now, Lorraine. Track shifted slightly west. Cone running straight up through our county. 6 to 9 inches. Possibly more. The creek was the spine of this subdivision's drainage. Every house on the bottom 3 streets drains through that bed. Marlene's, Brad's, Suzanne's. When the storm hits, the water has nowhere to go. The concrete plug is a dam. The neighborhood below it is a bathtub. Doris stared at the screen. Frank, are you telling me their houses are going to flood? I'm telling you their houses are going to flood badly. There is nothing they can do about it now, because the concrete is already cured. Can we warn them? They poured a federal waterway shut while standing on my property and laughing at me. The EPA inspector is coming Friday. The storm hits Sunday. We can warn them. We cannot stop the water. She nodded slowly. And we should not stop it. No, we should not. The meeting wound down. People left in pairs, folders under their arms. Marcus was last out the door. He stopped on the porch. Frank, you knew. From Saturday morning, you knew the storm was coming. You knew what they had just done to their own houses. And you let them finish the pour. It was not a question. I thought about how to answer it. Marcus, I've been a stormwater engineer for 30 years. I've spent my entire career trying to keep water out of people's basements. Saturday morning, 3 people stood on my property and destroyed the drainage for an entire subdivision because they thought it would raise property values. I could have stopped them inside 20 minutes. I chose not to. I'm not proud of that. But I'm not going to pretend I didn't know what I was doing. He looked at me for a long second. Frank, I would have done the same thing. I know. He walked home. I locked the door. The leather folder was still on my kitchen table. I sat down in front of it, rested one hand on the cover, then pulled it across the table and opened it for the first time in 9 years. One document, one sheet of paper, yellowed at the edges. A folded engineering drawing, slightly larger than the folder. The Cedar Hollow Estates Master Drainage is built, sheet 1 of 8. Filed with the county in November of 1996. In the bottom right corner, in the title block, in black ink that had not faded, Engineer of Record, Franklin R. Doyle, PE license number 28041. I looked at my own signature for a long time. Then I refolded the drawing, put it back in the folder, and closed the cover. Not yet. I checked the radar one more time. 5 days to landfall. The certified envelope showed up Thursday afternoon. I signed for it at the mailbox. The mail carrier had seen the return address county clerk, lien recording division, and he knew what was in his hand before I did. I opened it on the front porch. A recorded lien. $5,000 original fine. $2,000 interim board penalties. $750 administrative recording fees. $2,000 more in remediation cost recovery. Total, $9,750 secured against my house, signed by Marlene Voss. Filing date at the bottom, October 7th. I looked at that date a long time. The original violation was October 5th. The bylaws, Cedar Hollow's own bylaws, drafted by Marlene's own board, required 30 days notice before a lien could be recorded. She had filed in 2. I walked back inside, slid the filing into folder 5, and drew a small mark on the legal pad. Procedural defect. Filed 28 days early. Self-voiding under Article 9. I underlined it once. She had given me another weapon. She did not know it yet. 2 hours later my phone rang. Doris. Frank. Marlene's at your gate. I walked out the back door with the phone already recording. The maintenance gate sits at the head of the easement, where the path drops down toward the creek. There are 3 keys to that gate. Mine, the HOA's, the county's, standing arrangement since 1996. Marlene was clipping a brand new combination padlock through the latch as I came up. Brad held the chain. Suzanne held a clipboard. 3 of Doris's neighbors had stopped on the sidewalk to watch. Marlene didn't stop clipping. Frank. As of this moment, the rear easement is closed to all non-board access pending completion of the remediation project. You're padlocking my gate. It's HOA gate. The maintenance easement is... Marlene, look at me. You're padlocking my gate, on my easement, on my deeded property, in front of 4 witnesses, while a federal investigation is pending. She paused. Half a second. Then she clicked the padlock shut. You're not setting foot near our creek again. She said our creek on camera, in front of 4 neighbors, in a voice Hector caught from his own porch on his own phone. I lowered my phone. I did not speak. She walked past me with her clipboard. Brad and Suzanne followed. I waited until they were gone, then filmed the padlock from 3 angles. Filmed the packaging Brad had dropped at the base of the post. Filmed Doris's neighbors waving at me with the slow, deliberate wave of people who had just realized they were witnesses. 2 more items in folder 5. Padlock. County keyed gate. Obstruction of easement. Our creek. Audio on camera. 3 civilian witnesses. That night, Marlene tried one more thing. A special community town hall. 7 p.m. The clubhouse. Subject line on the flyer. Update on the Doyle property remediation dispute. Doris forwarded it to me with 3 exclamation points. I went. I walked in and stood at the back. 40 people in folding chairs. Marlene at the podium with a projector. The first slide already up. My full name, my address, my lot number, delinquent homeowner undermining community improvement, in red. A few in the front rows turned to look at me. Most looked away. Doris was in the 3rd row with her arms crossed. Hector beside her. The Pritchards behind them. Marlene began. Good evening. As many of you know, Mr. Doyle on Lot 41 has been actively interfering with a board-approved community improvement project. She clicked to the next slide. A photograph. Of me, on my own back porch, holding a phone. That was the picture she had chosen to introduce me with. A man on his own property, filming a federal violation. Doris stood up. She didn't say anything. She picked up her purse and walked out. Hector stood up. Then the Pritchards, then Ray, then Marcus, then a woman I didn't know, then a young couple from the new builds. By the time Marlene's mouth caught up to what was happening in the room, 11 people had walked out. She didn't notice. She kept clicking through her slides. I waited until the 11th person reached the back. Then I followed them out, without saying a word. The door swung shut behind me on the sound of Marlene's voice, still going, into a thinning room. I drove home with the radio off. I laid the lien filing on the kitchen table next to the padlock photos and a screenshot of the town hall slide. Then I did something I had been putting off all week. I laid every exhibit out in order. Not the order I'd collected them. The order I was going to use them. Deed, plat, Article 12, the October 3rd memo, the orange notice, the violation notice, the lien with its date stamp circled in red, the bylaws clause on the 30-day rule, the padlock photos, the Our Creek audio, the town hall slide, the witness statements, the EPA case number, the poor video, folder 6, the 22 months of fines, and 1 foreclosure. At the bottom of the stack, I placed the leather folder, unopened, 15 exhibits in the only order that mattered, from least to most devastating. I sat down across from the table and looked at the arrangement for almost an hour. I rehearsed it in my head, the order, the pauses, the name I would say second, the sentence I would speak when I reached the bottom of the stack and opened the leather folder. I did not write the sentence down. I had known what it was going to be for 30 years. I checked the radar at 11. Lorraine had strengthened. Tropical storm. Inland bands reaching our county by Sunday morning. The forecast had climbed. 8 to 12 inches. Some local pockets up to 15. I looked at the radar, then at the stack, then at the leather folder. I spoke to the empty room. 11 hours. Then we'll see whose creek it was. I turned out the kitchen light and went to bed. The first heavy rain band hit at 4:47 a.m. Sunday morning. The first heavy band of Lorraine hit at 4:47 a.m. I was already awake. I made coffee in the dark and watched the radar. Red and purple sweeping up through South Georgia. The leading edge crossed our county line at 5:12. By 6, rain was sheeting against my windows hard enough that I couldn't see the back fence. I put on a rain jacket and walked out into my own yard first. My drainage worked. It was supposed to. I had built this lot to handle a 100-year storm 30 years ago, when I bought it. The koi pond ran clean. The stormwater channel along the east property line was carrying water briskly toward the back, exactly the way it was drawn. The water reached the back fence and stopped. On the other side of that fence, behind the gate Marlene had padlocked on Thursday, my creek used to begin. There was no creek now. There was a slab, and on top of it, a rising lake of muddy brown water with nowhere to go. He filmed it for a full minute. By 7:30, the low end of Cedar Hollow was underwater. I walked down the hill, phone out. The streets dipped toward the bottom 3 blocks, where Marlene, Brad, and Suzanne lived in the biggest houses with the longest driveways. I did not need to walk all the way down. I could see it from the curve at the top of the hill. The bottom 3 streets were not streets anymore. They were a brown lake. Cars were floating. Mulch swirled across the surface in a wide brown ribbon. A lawn chair from somebody's back patio sat upright in the middle of the cul-de-sac, fully afloat, like a man waiting for a bus. The water reached the second step of Marlene's front porch. Doris called at 7:42. Frank, the whole bottom of the neighborhood is a lake. I know. Their cars are floating. I see them. Up Hose. Frank, you knew. I knew. You knew exactly. I knew exactly. I heard her breathing on the other end. Then, quietly, good. I walked down toward the maintenance gate. Marlene's padlock was still clipped through the latch, sealed shut Thursday afternoon, still sealed at 7:50 Sunday morning. On the other side of that gate, the only path emergency drainage crews could use to reach the concrete plug was blocked by a padlock the HOA had installed on a county-keyed gate. I filmed the padlock. I filmed the muddy water lapping against it from the inside. I filmed, in the distance, the orange sticker on the HOA entry monument. Cedar Hollow Estates, a premier community. One continuous, unedited clip. 2 minutes. That clip was going to be Exhibit 8. A county emergency vehicle came up the hill around 8. The driver rolled his window down. Sir, are you a resident? Lot 41, up the hill. You know who has the key to this gate? The HOA padlocked it Thursday afternoon, without authorization. None of the 3 official keys county, HOA, mine, will open that padlock. He blinked. They padlocked an emergency access gate. For a creek, They thought it was an eyesore. He looked at the gate, the brown water, me. Sir, is your name on a complaint with EPA Region 4? Frank Doyle. Officer Chen called us last night. Told us to expect you. Told us not to cut that padlock until she got here. She's flying down from Atlanta this morning. Then we wait. He looked back down the hill at the floating cars. How bad is it going to get? It's exactly as bad as it looks. The creek was the drainage spine for the entire low end of this subdivision. They sealed it 10 days ago. Water will keep rising until the storm passes, or somebody breaks the plug. How long? Storm tapers tomorrow afternoon. 30 hours, give or take. Jesus. He's not the one I'd be calling right now. He almost laughed, caught himself, rolled the window up and drove down the hill to where his truck could not actually go. A local news van showed up at 11. I do not know how they knew. Hector thinks Doris called somebody at the station. Doris denies it. The reporter saw me first. Sir, can you tell us what happened here? I looked past her, at the flooded cul-de-sac where Marlene's mailbox was now sticking out of the water like a snorkel. Ask the HOA. They built this lake on purpose. 10 days ago. The videographer lowered his camera halfway and looked at her. She raised it back up. What do you mean? Built it on purpose. Their president filled the drainage creek with concrete on October 5th. On my private property. Over my objection. The federal investigation opened the same afternoon. The storm hit 5 days later. The water you're filming has nowhere to go because they sealed the only place it could go. I gave her my name, my lot number. Told her Officer Chen of the EPA would be on site within the hour. I did not tell her about the leather folder. That part was for Tuesday night, in the clubhouse. The knock on my door came at 2:53 a.m. Monday morning. I had been expecting it for almost 20 hours. Clean towels on the dryer. Fresh coffee on at midnight. When I opened the door, Marlene Voss was on my porch in a bathrobe over her pajamas. Soaked. Mascara running. Hair flat against her skull. Barefoot. She had walked up the hill from her flooded house with no shoes on. She did not speak for 3 seconds. Frank, please, my house is the water is up to. She stopped. She saw the look on my face. It was not anger. I was not angry at her on that porch at 3 in the morning. I was very, very tired. Of her. Of her board. Of every smirk she had pointed at me since Saturday. I was tired. And I was finished. I handed her one of the clean towels. Sit down, Marlene. I'll help. But not the way you want. She came inside. She sat in a folding chair I pulled from the closet. She wrapped the towel around her shoulders. She was shaking, and I do not think it was all from the cold. I was already on the phone before the kitchen light fully warmed up. Officer Chen, it's Frank. She just came to my door. A pause. Frank, tell her not to leave that house. I'm 20 minutes out. I want her there when I arrive. Understood. I hung up and turned to look at Marlene. She was staring at the leather folder on my kitchen table. She did not know what it was. She did not know what was in it. She was just looking at it because it was the only thing on the table that did not match. I did not tell her. I just poured her a cup of coffee. The emergency HOA meeting Marlene called was supposed to be hers. She had set it for Tuesday at 7 p.m. in the clubhouse to address the unprecedented weather event and Mr. Doyle's role in the drainage situation. She had sent the flyer from her own email account at 5:30 a.m. Monday, 6 hours after she had sat in my kitchen wrapped in a towel. She did not know I was coming. The clubhouse was packed. Every folding chair was taken. People stood along the walls. Officer Chen sat in the second row in a windbreaker with her case file open in her lap. A man in a county code enforcement polo sat beside her with a clipboard. The reporter from Sunday Morning was in the back row, with her videographer setting up a tripod. Marlene took the podium. She did not look at me. I was standing at the back wall with a single manila folder. Good evening. We are here tonight to discuss an act of God that has impacted our community, and to address Mr. Doyle's continued refusal to maintain the rear easement on his property. I started walking up the center aisle. She stopped talking. I set the manila folder on the podium beside her microphone. I did not ask her to step aside. She stepped aside. I opened the folder. The first document, I said, is my deed, filed in 2012. The creek bed is on my private property. The HOA easement is for non-destructive maintenance and access only. That language is in paragraph 4. I held it up. Marlene's mouth opened. Brad, in the front row, looked at the floor for the first time. The second document is the 1996 county plat. The creek is labeled right here. Tributary 4, protected drainage corridor, not common area, not HOA landscaping. I laid it on the podium next to the deed. Suzanne, in the second row, started to cry quietly. She did not try to hide it. Marlene did not turn to look at her. The third document, I said, is the board memo from October 3rd, signed by Marlene Voss, Brad Henley, and Suzanne Park, authorizing the concrete pour under Article 12 of the Cedar Hollow Bylaws Common Area Beautification. I laid it next to the plat. Article 12 only applies to common area. The creek is not common area. It is on the plat I just showed you, with my name on the deed I showed you before that. Marlene reached for the microphone. Frank, I think we need to... I held up one hand. Not high, just enough. She lowered the microphone. A woman in the third row I did not know said, out loud, "Oh my God." The fourth document is the lien Marlene filed against my house on October 7th. I held it up. The date stamp at the bottom was circled in red ink. The lien was filed 2 days after the violation. The HOA's own bylaws, Article 9, require 30 days notice before any lien can be recorded. She filed in 2. The lien is procedurally void, and it has been void since the moment she signed it. I laid it down. Brad put his head in his hands. In the front row, an older man I had never spoken to nodded slowly 3 times and looked at his wife. I turned slightly toward the second row. Officer Chen, would you like to enter your exhibit? She stood up. She walked to the podium with the easy posture of a woman who had been waiting for this exact moment for 30 hours. She laid a single document down beside my 4. It was on EPA letterhead. For the record, she said, the creek behind Lot 41 is a water of the United States under the Clean Water Act. Filling it without a Section 404 permit is a federal violation. The statutory penalty is $64,618 per day, per violation, per individual signer of the authorizing order. She paused. The pour was on October 5th. Today is October 29th. That is 24 days. Multiplied across 4 signatures, the federal exposure as of this evening is $6,204,328. She let it land. That liability is personal. It is not coverable by HOA insurance. It does not attach to the homeowners association as an entity. It attaches to the 4 people who signed the order. Suzanne made a sound I do not want to describe. Marlene started visibly doing the math, her lips moving. The reporter's videographer was filming. I waited until Officer Chen had stepped back to her chair. Then I reached into the manila folder one last time. There is one more document, I said. I had hoped not to need it. I slid out a single yellowed sheet, folded, slightly larger than the folder itself. I unfolded it on the podium and turned it so the room could see. It was an engineering drawing. In the bottom right corner of the title block, in black ink that had not faded, Engineer of Record, Franklin R. Doyle, PE license, number 28041. The room went silent, the kind of silent where you can hear a folding chair creak 2 rows back. I let them look at it for a long 10 seconds. This is the master drainage as built for Cedar Hollow Estates, filed with the county in November of 1996, sheet 1 of 8. The bottom right corner is the Engineer of Record's signature block. I tapped it. That is my signature. That is my license number. I designed this neighborhood's drainage system 30 years ago. Every house on the bottom 3 streets sits on a hydraulic system I drew at a drafting table in 1995. The creek you sealed shut was the spine of that system. When you poured concrete into it, you poured concrete into the only thing keeping your basements dry. I looked at Marlene. I tried to tell you, Marlene. You wouldn't listen. She did not collapse all at once. She collapsed in stages. First her shoulders, then her grip on the podium, then her legs. Brad caught her on the way down and lowered her into the folding chair behind the podium. Suzanne was openly sobbing now. The room did not look away. The county code officer stood. Mrs. Voss. As of this moment, the board is served formal notice of personal liability. The concrete plug behind Lot 41 must be removed at the 4 signers' personal expense, under licensed engineering supervision, within 60 days. Failure to comply is a Class A misdemeanor in this county. He set the order on the podium. Doris stood up in the third row. She did not say anything. She just began to clap, slowly, once every 2 seconds. Hector stood and joined her. The Pritchards, Marcus, Ray, The older man in the front row, I had never spoken to. The young couple from the new builds. By the time the applause filled the room, I had already picked up my folder. I walked back down the center aisle and out the clubhouse door. I did not look back. 60 days later, the concrete came out. A licensed excavation crew did the work. Their invoice was billed to 4 people personally: Marlene Voss, Brad Henley, Suzanne Park, and the 4th signer on the contractor authorization, a board member named Dan, who had not been at the pour but had signed the paperwork the week before. Total cost of removal, $112,000. Split 4 ways, no insurance coverage. I stood at the top of my yard with a thermos of coffee and watched the jackhammers go in. The EPA settlement landed 3 weeks after that. $284,000 in federal fines. Personal liability, not coverable by any policy any of them held. Marlene took a second mortgage. Brad sold his boat. Suzanne moved out of Cedar Hollow before Thanksgiving. The lien on my house was voided by the county clerk on procedural grounds, filed 28 days early, exactly as I had circled in red on my kitchen table. The HOA paid me $14,500 in damages for the procedurally void filing. I deposited the check and did not spend $1 of it on anything. Marlene resigned by letter on the morning of November 12th. Brad and Suzanne were recalled by community vote on the 15th. The recall vote was 78-4. The new board was elected the first week of December. Doris Ramirez ran on a platform of 2 sentences. No more bullying, no more fines over tomato planters. She won by a margin nobody bothered to count. The first thing she did, on her first day in office, was rewrite the fine schedule. No fine over $50 without a homeowner vote. No lien proceedings without a 30-day cure period and a hearing in front of an independent arbitrator. The flagpole rule was scrapped. The mulch rule was scrapped. The garage door color list was scrapped. Marcus repainted his garage that weekend, a color that was not on any approved list, and nobody said a word. The second thing Doris did was reopen Mr. Avery's file with the county. The foreclosure had been initiated under a lien that, once the audit was done, had the same procedural defect as mine. Filed early. Filed by Marlene's board. Filed in violation of the HOA's own bylaws. The county petitioned to reverse the foreclosure on procedural grounds in February. Mr. Avery had moved into an apartment in Macon by then. His son drove him back up for the hearing. I went to that hearing. I did not say anything. I sat in the back row in a clean shirt and watched. Mr. Avery got his house back in March. He hugged his son on the courthouse steps. He hugged Doris. He looked across the parking lot at me. I nodded once. He nodded back. That was the only time we ever spoke. Officer Chen visited the neighborhood one more time in April. She came to inspect the restored creek bed. I had supervised the restoration myself, pro bono, on the condition that the work be done to the original 1996 specifications. The county had agreed. The contractor had agreed. Marlene's lawyer, she had hired one by then, had not been in a position to disagree. Officer Chen walked the length of the bed with a clipboard and a small camera. The bed was clean. The grade was correct. The drainage was running. A new county marker had been driven into the bank where the old one used to be. Protected tributary 4 federal jurisdiction. She closed her clipboard and looked at me. Frank, Officer Chen, you're not going to tell me what the leather folder was, are you? I smiled. You already know what it was. She smiled back. She got in her car and drove back to Atlanta. I saved the last walk for a Saturday morning in late April. I made coffee. I put on a clean bathrobe, not the one I had been wearing on October 5th. That one had a coffee stain on the sleeve that had never come out. I picked up the same mug. I walked out the back door at 7:14 a.m. The exact minute the concrete truck had been grinding its drum behind my fence 6.5 months earlier. The back fence was the same fence. The gate was the same gate. The maintenance gate had been unlocked since the day Officer Chen cut Marlene's padlock off in November, and the county had reinstalled the original 3-key system the week after. I opened the gate. I walked down the slope to the creek. The water was running. Not pooled, not gray, not still. Running, in a clean line, the way it had run for every storm since 1996, except one. Birds were back in the willows on the far bank. The little drainage marker was sticking out of the bank again, painted yellow this time, with the new county designation on the side. I stood there for a while, with my hands in my bathrobe pockets, and listened to the water. It was doing the job it had been designed to do, by a younger man, at a drafting table, 30 years ago, who had not known then that he would one day move into the subdivision he had drawn, and that he would one day stand in this exact spot in a bathrobe and watch his own work outlast a woman who tried to bury it. I took one sip of coffee. Then I walked back inside. The leather folder is still in the bottom drawer of my desk. I have not opened it since the night of the meeting in October. I do not think I will need to open it again. The orange notice and the lien filing and the Article 12 memo and the padlock photographs are in a banker's box in the closet, in case anybody ever asks. The legal pad with the pencil notes is in the same box. The screenshot of Marlene's town hall slide is on a thumb drive in the box. I do not look at any of it. I just know it is there. Doris brought me a tomato from her replanted garden in July. It was the first ripe one off the vine. She set it on my kitchen counter without ceremony, said I told you it would be a Tuesday, and walked back home. It wasn't a Tuesday, it was a Wednesday. She knew that. I ate the tomato standing at the kitchen counter, looking out the back window at the creek that ran clean through my property, on a clean Wednesday afternoon, in a quiet neighborhood that had finally remembered how to be one. They thought they had buried an eyesore. They had buried a drainage system designed by the man in the bathrobe. And that, it turned out, was the most expensive mistake any HOA in this county had ever made.